Hey,
Hello,
Jason,
sir.
can you hear me okay?
I can. How are you?
Right on time. I'm great. Are you great?
I'm great. I'm great.
Well, before I ask you about this wonderful, wonderful book and all that, how long was it actually from you writing the book to having it published and having it in my hands?
Um, so I started it in, let me think, somewhere around January, February.
Wow. Okay. So right before COVID, and then it
Yeah.
came
So
out in the midst of COVID.
yeah. So I had the plans to write the book anyway, but COVID gave me obviously incredible time to really work on it and that sort of thing. So the timing, I mean, I hate to say this, but the timing of COVID actually worked for the book. For the book, it actually worked out because I had so much time. But so yeah, I
Right.
mean, I worked through that book 9 different times to get it done, and
Wow.
there were times I rewrote entire chapters. There was one chapter I think I rewrote it 3 times. I just and by the time I got to about the third or fourth time, I'm like, man, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Because it's a weird, not weird, but because I built characters, it's the first time I wrote a book this way.
Right.
And, my last book was kind of just me and blah, 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 blah. But to build real life story into characters where one's a female was difficult. But it was fun because I weaved myself and my brother and my dad. We're all the characters all the time. So it's kind of weird, so, but it's fun. It
Yeah,
was fun.
one of the things I love about your story isn't just that you always tried new things and you grew, but when I say let's compare Todd to the average person, because the average person hasn't basically been around the world, been on television for thousands upon thousands of hours, gotten famous and all that, and done all that before they're 40, and then gone, what do I do now? And you've again reinvented yourself. Great path that you've carved in finance, writing books, and all that. Who is the person that kind of pushed you to realize, hey, there's got to be life after baseball, not just go to baseball card shows and signings?
Yeah, it was first of all, I tell you, when I finished playing, I was blessed because I had so much opportunity in the sport of baseball. My family was young. We were still having kids, and I was like, man, to live in the baseball world means night games, road trips, and I lived that life as a kid and then as an adult.
Right.
So I retired at 37. All I knew was Major League Baseball. And I was like, I'm just going to do something different. And I didn't know what it was going to be. And everything, just doors started to open. First of all, I tried to take a year off. And I think I lasted about 6, 7 months. And I thought retirement would be cool, except for I was like, I go to bed asking myself, man, who am I? What am I going to do? And because my whole life I was a baseball guy, right? I'm the baseball player. So my whole identity changed as I began to change. But what I realized in it is I'm not what I do. And I was like, man, I'm not a baseball player. I was a guy who played baseball,
Right.
right? And I was a kid who had a dream that got a chance to live that out. And I was a kid who had an incredible environment and with my father and all of that. So as I began to kind of pave my way, it wasn't all successful. I always say, well, this is easier than, giving up a 3-run homer in the 8th. And so there was a lot of failures along the way. And one of the things that I did was I took time out.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm just going to do a massive reflection. And when I was successful, what happened? What was it? What model? What principle? What did I do? What did I think? How did I act? And I just started to say, well, can I take the success and the success principles from the sport? Can I apply it to business and to life? And I found out that you can. And, so it's always underneath it all, always comes hard work, right?
Mhm.
discipline, commitment, passion, love what you do, can't wait to go, and start working on it. But there were things along the way, and with creating habits and routines and rituals that
Mhm.
I really stole from Major League Baseball that were kind of like forced habits. And I call them forced because as a baseball player, I didn't get to pick the schedule of the day. It was
Right.
picked for me. But
Long
I
and
studied, yeah, but I studied that and I said, well, what did we do? And what did it create? And I was like, man, I can do this in life and I can also do it in business. So that's what I began to do. And, today we've just been so, I'm so grateful. I was so blessed because,
yeah.
when we went through the financial 2008, I was a part of that. I'm no longer a player and my finances got turned upside down just like the rest of the world. And I'm like, wow, everything I did in baseball is like going up in smoke. What am I going to do? And it was like, that's where this major reflection for me, I was like, I can do this again. I can create success. I can create wealth. I just got to go study those principles and figure out what did I do. And then I just applied those same things, those same routines and habits and rituals to not only to my life for happiness, but for business to grow things. And here I am today, and we've gone through COVID, and I don't like to say it too much, but we've been on the opposite end of it, where our companies have done great, and where I know there's people in pain today, and some suffering and setbacks, and people getting laid off, and companies and this and that, but we've been on the opposite end of that, and
Yeah.
so I've been, I feel blessed and grateful for that, for sure.
It's not easy to admit the positive things that have happened during COVID. Anybody who's, I want to say, motivated to make changes can make those changes, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going to compliment you further where I say that anytime a person who people know, a public figure, kind of comes to the table and goes, look, I'm not perfect. I mean, we as everyday people know nobody's perfect, but it does take a lot of guts because maybe it throws a brand off. Maybe a couple of people are going, what? I thought that person was perfect, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really refreshing to see your book, even though if it's a veiled character or not, that you admit some of that stuff right there. So where I'm going with that is, did you have any hesitation? Because this is not your first book, but telling people about worry and anxiety, and that you even suffered from that.
Yeah. And I'm unfinished, which means that, tomorrow I could be faced with a circumstance or a situation where you take a step backwards, where it's
Yeah.
not like, hey, I have it all figured out and I don't want to pretend like I do. Do I have days where I'm upset? Of course. Do I have days where, man, I'm just so sad and things aren't working out and I'm failing? Of course.
Yeah.
The difference, I think, is that it doesn't stay with me as long as it used to stay with me. And I have a toolbox that has been built by people like my father and Tony La Russa and Cito Gaston and world champions and Hall of Famers, where I had a front row seat to what worked and what didn't work.
Right.
And because of that, we built this tool chest. And because I had great mentors in my life, is when I feel a certain way, I know there's a way out, so do I still get and have all the feelings that most people go through? The answer is, of course I do.
Right.
The difference is I've built a tool chest that I can go, it's kind of like that. It's the whole thing with what I call the 180-degree mindset. Do negative things run through my mind? Yeah, just like everyone else, except I call time out on myself. Mm-hmm. And I say, Todd, stop that. And what's 180 degree from a negative thought is a positive thought. And then I reintroduce that positive thought into my mind. Mm-hmm. And then I start talking to myself. And it's the one time you need to listen less and talk more, is when you're doing self-talk to yourself. Because if you listen more to yourself, you're going to listen more to negativity. Listen, I had that battle, and I didn't always have this tool chest. So every model and every principle that Kat goes through in the book, and her son and the grandfather, every one of those, I failed at miserably. I mean, miserably. And, and what's funny is, do I sometimes fail at them today? Yes. I mean, it's funny because my wife will say to me sometimes, hey, I got this great video I need you to listen to. And I say, okay, send it to me. And she'll send it to me, and it's my video on the subject of something I'm suffering for right now. And she goes, you need to go back and listen to yourself, you know? So she becomes a great coach of mine through my material, right? And it's like, so I think the one thing I'm not afraid of, and do I have fears? Of course, but the one thing I'm not afraid of is trying and failing in front of other people. I just like, I've gotten to a point where, you know, when you've been booed by 50,000 people, right? You kind of understand, right? There's days. I remember one time I was coming off the mound in Toronto, a guy standing up behind the third base dugout. He yells, Stottlemyre, you suck. And I'm like, man, I know. Like, I suck. I got to get better at this. And I think that's one of the things that the sport taught me, was that you do fail. You have to go through it, and you have to find ways to get better, to find an edge and to get better and to improve. And because of that, whether it's in life or in business, I'm okay putting myself out there, knowing, especially if you're going to build a new business, there's a hell of a chance I'm going to fail. But I'm okay I'm going all in. And if I fail, I fail. You know, I'm not going to quit,
right?
But I may fail, you know? So, and I've gotten to a place in my life where I'm okay trying things, you know, stupid things. Like in life, we go on a family vacation and we run those, what are those things called?
ATVs or?
No, the things you run around on the street. It's on two wheels. You stand on it. What are those things
called?
Segways.
Segways.
I've never been on a Segway in my life. And I'm thinking, and the guy says, no, this is easy. You just got to do your balance. I said, I'm an athlete. I got this. So I got all my kids and my wife, and we're going to do the Segways. And I said, I'll go first. And he goes, now move it forward, and you can see how fast you go. And I started going fast, and pretty soon I'm shaking, and I fall, and I land on my back, wipe out. You know, my kids are laughing and having a great time. And I'm like, hey, I at least know what the machine is capable of now.
And you got up.
I failed. I fell. But it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and I try to coach and teach people that the biggest fear people have is how they're going to look to their friends. Man, when we solve that piece, it's unbelievable what you'll have the courage to put yourself out there to do then. And that's what I'm trying to do with this book, is make people understand, is like, look, just because you have success, and you said it perfectly, does not mean you're never going to fail.
Right.
It probably means you failed more.
Right.
Right. So
absolutely. And the next question I have, I don't know if it's going to be a 5-minute answer or a 10-second answer. Okay. And if it's the 5-minute, we'll end on it. And if it's the shorter one, I'll ask something else. And that's, you mentioned that listening to some of your old talks and getting reflective does help you through stuff. When I'm having a rough day, usually podcasts and or heavy metal and or escapist kind of entertainment or a walk gets me out of that. What gets you out of it?
Ooh. So when I'm having a tough day, you know, and I'll talk in different pieces here, but you know, long walks, and it hasn't always been that way for me, but I have found as I've gotten older, you know, and I have the thing that if I had a tough day and I was, you know, out maybe working on a company or what have you, it's not fair to my family to come in to my home with that baggage. So there are times I literally come in, I say to my wife, it's been a brutal day, and I'll go take a long walk. And most of the time that works, but not always, because it's not the same shoe fits all the time. But there's something about getting out and walk, and something about getting out in nature and clearing your mind and your head. And sometimes I just go to my office and I get quiet with myself and I just focus on I literally just focus on my breathing, close my eyes, and I just try to clear. I just try to get clear of it. I will tell you that when I was an athlete, when I was struggling, I needed to go watch old film of me doing well, just to remind me that I could do it. And I would tell you that, and you mentioned, 3 or 4 things for yourself. It's like, that's the key, is what works for you. And that's why, like with this book, I'm not saying, hey, put this shoe on, it's going to work exactly for you like it did for me. Right. It's an example of something that you got to work for and find. The making in this book, and I want to share this with you, and I hope I'm not going to take too much of your time, but
hey, you got all the time in the world. I look at those trophies behind you.
Well, I always tell people it ends up how I got this, and I always tell people, I go, now listen, that's yesterday's great, where it was a great moment. Yeah. They collect dust. They're not going to do anything for me moving forward, but I'm proud of them, and whatever else. But it reminds me, those trophies have a lot to do with this book because, in 1993, we just won our 2nd world championship. And here I am, 27, 28 years old. I'm making millions of dollars. I've lived out my childhood dream that started in Yankee Stadium with my father. Mm-hmm. And we just become world champions for the 2nd time in the 2nd consecutive year. If you would have looked at me from the outside, you would have been like, wow, man, this guy lived out his childhood dream. He's making millions. He's got the whole world, man. He's like, you talk about a guy that's got it made. Right. There was a problem. The problem was when I stared in the mirror, I could not stand the guy looking back at me. And that was because of about 12 years earlier, when I was 15 and my little brother was 11, I gave him a bone marrow transplant. He was on his 3rd bout of leukemia, and they said his only chance for survival was a bone marrow transplant. I was the perfect match blood-wise. My marrow put him into a coma that eventually took his life. At that moment, obviously, traditional sadness set in, but I had 2 other emotions, and that was hate and guilt. I hated the world for taking my little brother away from me, and I felt guilty and responsible for being a part of him not making it. And I never healed that piece. And after the 93 World Series, I got home, and I was at a place where I'm like, I'm a better pitcher than I'm performing on the field, but I'm also a better person than I'm performing in life. And I couldn't stand it. I was just tired. I was tired of ending up in the same place over and over and over with the same thoughts and the same emotions. And I was, at that point in my career, I was a very emotional pitcher where something happened on the field, man, I might go crazy, So I reached out to a guru. The guy's name was Harvey Dorfman. He was the mindset coach for Major League Baseball. He'd worked with Hall of Famers, and he'd helped guys turn their careers around. And I reached out and called him. I said, Harvey, this is Todd Stottlemyre. He goes, I've been waiting on your call. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know he knew who I was, right? So I didn't think I was anything special, but I was like, and I said, I need to meet. He goes, I know. We booked a meeting. It was supposed to last a couple of hours. It lasted 12 hours. In the first hour, he said, Todd, would you do it again? And I said, do what? He said, would you give a bone marrow transplant to your little brother again? And I just lost it. I broke down in tears. I mean, he just peeled me back, and I was like, wow. And I said to him, I said, Harvey, I would give that bone marrow transplant every minute of every hour of every day. I do it over. And he says, didn't you already do it? I said, yeah. He said, did you do everything you could do? I said, yeah, Harv. He goes, then let it go. He says, you didn't kill your little brother. He says, you're not God. He says, he says, you did everything you could do, and you're willing. He says, now, if you would have said no, then I would have told you to change now to honor the defeat. He says, because as a human being, to be able to change and to change the direction of how you think and how you feel can start literally right this second. And I was like, wow. And we just hugged and this and that. And it was like, At that moment, it was the first time someone gave me permission not to feel guilty.
Wow.
It was the first time. It was the first time someone said, you didn't kill your little brother. Now, I didn't go around asking. I just carried it around with me.
Right.
And I was living in the prison of unforgiveness. And I built that prison. And every time I got into a thing I couldn't control, that unforgiveness and that hate and that guilt would show up and ruin the mastery of the moment. Doesn't it sound like 2020?
Yeah.
Which is why the timing of the book coming out and what people need to understand, because the observer, you see, stands between stimulus and reaction. And the observer is in the middle. And how are we going to respond? And we're in a world where we respond with hate, like immediately. And it's just unbelievable to me. And here's the beauty, not the beauty, but here's the truth of this, is I live that. I live that world of hate and guilt and response to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Harvey changed my life in the last hour. He said, listen, I'm going to put you on a 7-day challenge. And he says, I'm going to call you in 7 days. He says, but for the next 7 days, he said, all I want you to do is observe the way you think and the way you feel. He says, you're not allowed to respond to anything, only document. He says, I need you to step outside of yourself and really dial in and observe your thinking and observe your emotions and document it. Because then here's what he said. Based on those responses, we're going to build models for you, principles and models for you to be able to change your state of thinking and emotions for high performance at the snap of a finger. I was like, wow. And I got to tell you something. It's unbelievable when you really just, when you dial in and become the observer of your thoughts, man, it can be ugly sometimes. Yeah. And I like to think I'm a great person, and I can sometimes have just foul thought, and I call timeout.
Yeah.
And then Harvey says, thought replacement. Thoughts drive emotions, emotions drive your life, and it's all the state of being. That's what this book is all about, is helping people get back into a state in order to perform. Think about negative talk and how many times someone says, I can't. I want to take all the can't people into I can people. Mm-hmm. Not superficially, to where it's a process, it's a practice. And I think that if you'll practice I can, and I think if you'll practice replacing thoughts, and I think if you'll practice that, you'll find that you can change the state of your emotions literally anytime you want, which is why sometimes things like we talked about before, they'll add up, and what's the result? Take a long walk. Listen, it's crazy when you take a walk and you just listen to the birds chirp. But you can't hear the birds chirp when your mind is going like this and your emotions are this. You'll walk by the same bird chirping and never hear it. It's kind of like being grateful. You can't be grateful and pissed off and angry at the same time, right? Well, when you're angry and upset and emotional, you also miss the birds chirping. So what am I even talking about? I'm talking about living a life of fulfillment and happiness and wealth being more than money. Mm-hmm. It's like I built my foundation of my wealth starting with, my beliefs spiritually.
Sure.
Then my family. It's like, if my family's not wealthy, I don't give a damn about making money. Because if your family's broke, you're going to be broke, right? And it's kind of like, what if we focused on the wealth of what lifestyle is like, and some of the tools in your personal development and your family? How about your friends? How about the same person you used to love that you now hate because they got a different political view? Isn't that a problem?
Right. Todd, I cannot top that. And to, add to that, you're wearing a hat that says "Don't quit" with the
Don't quit.
"do" and the "it" highlighted. So I think that's all case in action over and over and over again. But what I'm also hearing is thank you, Harv, for
Changed
putting
my
you
life.
on the right path. But you had to do the work after Harv put you on that path.
Yeah. And he stayed with me, having coaches and mentors and working partners, accountability partners. It's like, I always tell people, I go, look, you're never as good as you're going to get or be or become without having the right mentors, coaches that care about you having success.
Mm-hmm.
So when I coach people, I tell them, I said, listen, I want you to have more success than I've ever had in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
That's what will make me happy. I don't want you to have success up to me so I keep you down. I want you to surpass me and then you go coach someone else. That's what Harvey did for me. Let me help you become as successful as you can be. And rest in peace, Harvey Dorfman, because, I hope he looks down on me and he's proud because I'm taking his tools, his principles, his models, and now go share them with the world so other people can have success.
Wow.
So, and it's become, it's weird. It's how this all started for me, because it's not like I had this vision, like, man, when I get done, I'm gonna go into business. I'm gonna write books, and then I'm gonna go help people. I'd have been like, are you crazy? I'm not doing any of that crap, right? And it was funny. There was a moment I was with my father about 5.5 years ago, and rest in peace, Dad. And he was going through a tough time, and he was battling multiple myeloma. And I was up there with him, and he was inspiring me. And I was 50 at the time, and he was inspiring me more than when he wore a Yankee uniform and I was a little kid running around the stadium. To just watch the warrior mentality and the positivity and his attitude towards life and battling this disease blew me away. And I remember one night I couldn't get over it. I mean, here this guy's circumstances are life and death, but he has this positivity of a vision of the future. And I'm like, how in the hell can he do this? It doesn't even make sense. And I find myself, I'm like, man, I wish I could be more like that. And that night I was at his house and I was staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. and I was like, man, I've been around greatness. And we inherited my father's environments of Yankee Stadium and Mickey Mantle, Thurman Munson, Bobby Mercer. And then I was around greatness when I got to play in my career, people so much better than me at the sport and understanding. And I got to be around such greatness. And I pulled from all the greatness for my benefit to perform and try to perform at a higher level. But what I realized that night is I have never told a story or offered a solution to someone to try to help them. And I remember that night, I was like, wow. And I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to make the second half of my life more about other people than more about me, more about others than myself. And I walked downstairs. My dad was having a cup of coffee, sitting in his chair. And I said, Dad, I'm going to write a book. And he goes, you should. And I said, Dad, I didn't tell you on what yet. And I said, I want to help people. Everything that you gave me, I wanted to put in my first book and all these lessons. And then when I was done with the book and we could put the book out, I was proud of it, Relentless Success. But I was like, man, there's so much more. And all I could think about over the last 5 years was this book, The Observer. And because it's real, because it's a real reflection, it's a real awareness, it's a self-awareness about how do you really think? And it's like, how do you really feel? And I know that we lie to others as people about how things are, but on the inside, there's a true story. And that's where I want to help people. I want to help people from the inside out because I had problems on the inside. My insides were Darren, they were eating me up. They ate me for lunch, man. And because of that, it's like my mess has become my message, that anyone who wants to perform at a higher level, or maybe there's someone out there that hasn't forgiven a friend or forgiven themselves, or maybe they're blaming their environments, or maybe they're still blaming how they grew up.
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't taken 100% responsibility that, yes, you can change. And yes, and I tell people this all the time. I don't know statistically if this is correct, but supposedly that our chances of being born and me and you being here was 1 in 400 million. Didn't we already do the impossible? Why do we have to stop the day we were born is not when we were supposed to stop.
Yeah.
There's a seed of greatness and a gift inside of everyone. You have a gift and you're running with that gift. And you're becoming a champion of that gift. I couldn't do what you do, you know, and you know, maybe someone else can't do what I can do, but that's okay. But we can share in our stories, in our paths, in our messages, things we overcome, and we can help people out. And that's what we're doing here, man. Me and you right now, that's what we're going to do right here.
2 thumbs up for me. Well, next time I interview you, we're going to have to talk stocks and finance, but
there you go.
Then,
by the way, that was a whole new game. I had so much fun doing that, but
that is a brilliant reinvention and all that. And yeah. I want to get to the bottom of that one, but I can't thank you enough for your time right now. Congratulations on this book, and really looking forward to seeing everything you have coming in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Darren. I
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Take
Stay
care.
in touch, my friend.
Likewise.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Paltrocast.